name is Lori McGunn, and I'm standing at the 21st Ohio Voluntary Infantry Monument on the Chickamauga National Battlefield as we remember the 161st anniversary of the Battle of Chickamauga. This marker is not on the audio tour. You must park at the bottom of Snodgrass Hill and make a short hike to reach this location. But of all the 705 commemorations around the park, this one is extremely personal. You see, I had at least 4 ancestors, all from northwestern Ohio, enlisted in the 21st OVI. I'd like to share a little about them today. My great-great-great-grandfather, Joshua Vance Smith, was one of the early members of the 21st OVI, but he was discharged due to disability. That did not stop him from rejoining the 3rd Ohio Cavalry, where he was engaged here in the Battle of Chickamauga, just a few hundred yards from where I now stand. As a teamster, he helped load the trains and effectuate the Union retreat from this battlefield. His son Abram, however, suffered a much different fate. Last year, I read aloud a first-hand account from Major Arnold McMahon about what happened to the 21st OVI as they defended Snodgrass Hill while the rest of the Union Army retreated into Chattanooga. As Major McMahon stated in his field report, I have the honor to report that my regiment did the last firing upon and offered the last resistance to the advance of the enemy which he received and which checked his progress and thus ended the Battle of Chickamauga, unquote. Major McMahon went on to indicate in his field report that the 21st fired 43,550 rounds of ammunition, and in the end, 12 officers and 104 enlisted men were taken prisoner. My great-great-grandfather, Abraham Vance Smith, was one of those prisoners, along with Arnold McMahon. Both Joshua Vance Smith and his son Abram would later join the forward post of the GAR in Toledo. I am fortunate to have the recollections in their own words. From Joshua, we have the following. Was born the 5th day of October, 1819 in Bellefontaine, Logan County, Ohio. I too was born in Bellefontaine, Ohio. Back to Joshua. First enlisted August 29th, 1861 at Camp Vance, Findlay, Ohio, as Private, Company C, 21st Regiment, Ohio Infantry Volunteers, and was detailed for duty in Quartermaster's Department as Teamster. Was first discharged October 6, 1862 at Nashville, Tennessee on Surgeon Certificate of Disability. I re-enlisted as a private in 3rd Ohio Cavalry and was discharged as such August 2, 1865 at Edgeville, Tennessee by reason of the close of war. He continued, I served the 21st Ohio until discharged for disability, participating in its campaign in eastern Kentucky under General William Nelson. While a member of the 3rd Ohio Cavalry, I participated in the Battle of Chickamauga, Georgia, Salina, Georgia, and Wilson's Raid before Macon, Georgia. My associates in the 21st were George Sheets, Henry Van Camp, Archie Sargent, and Ben Rhodes. In the 3rd Ohio Cavalry, John Meyer and James Taylor. The most important event of my service was in the 3rd Ohio Cavalry. The Henry Van Camp that he mentioned was Joshua's nephew and cousin to Abram. Another cousin, Henry's brother Benjamin Franklin Van Camp, was also a member of Company C of the 21st Ohio Voluntary Infantry. He was wounded here at the Battle of Chickamauga and mustered out on July 5th, 1865 by order of the War Department. Let's get back to Abram, my great-great-grandfather. Abram recorded his remembrance for the GAR on at least 2 occasions. He was born the 19th of May, 1846, making him just 17 years old at the time of this battle. He first entered service the 22nd of June, 1862, enrolled at Perrysburg, Wood County, Ohio, and mustered in Company C, 21st Regiment OVI as a private. He tells us, quote, the first battle I engaged in was Stones River, then Tullahoma Campaign, and then Chickamauga, where I was taken prisoner on Sunday, September 20th, 1863. He reported, quote, my regiment was fighting the extreme right of the army, southwest of Horseshoe Ridge and Snodgrass House. There were about 175 of our regiment taken at the same time and place. The time was about 9 o'clock p.m. The 89th Ohio and the 22nd Michigan were on our left and lost in equal numbers. Our regiment was the last to leave the field. Continuing in Abrams' words, I was in Southern prisons until the close of the war. Following are the prisons I was confined in: Belle Isle, Richmond, Danville, Andersonville, Florence, Wilmington, and Goldsboro, North Carolina. I, with others, was exchanged and sent north after Johnston's surrender and was in hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. I contracted scurvy while in these southern prisons, and my right arm was amputated after the close of the war to save my life. When I came out of prison, I was a living skeleton. I weighed 65 pounds. My normal weight when taken prisoner was 140 pounds. My intimate comrades in service were Manning Abbott, Andrew Denst, Ben Rhodes, Abel Comstock, and Benjamin Hopper. I will now read a roll call of the names of Company C, 21st OVI, in honor of what they did here 161 years ago. But before I do that, I'd like to mention Mary Van Camp Smith, my great-great-great-grandmother. She was the wife of Joshua, mother in Abram, but she is not mentioned in any of the history books. As a wife and mother myself, I simply can't imagine the unbearable pain of sending her son and her husband into battle. Her nightmare continued, not knowing what had happened to Abram. To my son Eddie, my sister Renee, my niece, my nephew, and all of my cousins, all descendants of these remarkable people, remember that your strength and courage is not an accident. They are part of your DNA. And now the killed, wounded, missing, and captured of Company C, 21st OVI. Killed, Private Sidney Brewster, who was carried from this battlefield on September 19, 1863, by my great-great-grandfather. Private William Collins. Missing, Private William Hockenberger. Wounded, First Sergeant Augustus Beesenson, Sergeant Thomas Cook, Corporal James Hopper, Corporal James Leaf, Private James Beesenson, Private Thomas Crook, Private William Franks, Private Henry Hickson, Private Charles Lundy, Private Frederick McLargan, great-uncle of Civil War historian Dan Masters, Private George Richardson, Private Benjamin Van Camp. Captured, Captain Arnold McMahon, First Lieutenant John V. Patterson, Second Lieutenant Asa C. Spafford, who died while a prisoner in Columbia, South Carolina, Sergeant George Washington Clutter, wounded and captured, Private Manning Abbott, Private John Ashling, who was wounded and captured, Private Reason Bates, Private Dennis Byron Bentley, who died in Belle Isle Prison, Private Charles W. Beesenson, who died of his wounds, Private Hiram Bordner, Private George Caswell, who died in Andersonville, Private Herbert Crook, who died in Belle Island, Private Andrew Denst, who survived both Belle Island and Andersonville, Private Robert Ireland, who died in Belle Island, Private Henry Limbrick, Private Francis McMahon, Private John Moreland, who died in Danville, Private Franz Pienert, who died in Andersonville, Private Thomas Plemon, wounded and captured, Private Benjamin Rhodes, who survived Belle Isle and Andersonville, Private Harvey Spencer, died Danville Prison, and finally my great-great-grandfather, Private Abraham Vance Smith, captured here 161 years ago at the age of 17. But a footnote. Despite his extraordinarily harrowing experiences, both in battle and during captivity, Abram married Amy Wright on December 24th, 1867, and they had 4 children. Abram would survive all of them, dying February 5th, 1929, at age 82. Now, to honor all of the men who found themselves on this battlefield on September 20th, 1863, David Cox will perform the bugle call of taps to signal lights out at the end of this military day.
Good job.
Thank you.
Excellent, David. Excellent. Thank you. That one really rolled.